Hello, folks, and welcome back to another edition of Money in Motion. Today is Monday, July 17th, and excited to take a look at markets. Not a whole lot going on, just kind of digesting, I'd say, the massive move in the dollar following last week. So, a lot I want to talk about on that front, but otherwise, aside from equities or aside from crypto, equities are still pretty green. At least NAS is up on the day. We're basically flat. We'll see how things close towards the end of the day. Monday, obviously, being the worst day for stocks because I'll have to go back and get that book passage from the book Why You Win or Lose, but how they prophesize why, stocks are worst performing days on Monday. Might have some moral thing going to church on Sundays and not
Is
wanting
that
to
is that what
gamble
you did
on
yesterday?
Monday.
Is,
At
is
least in the 1920s, that was the case. I don't know what it really is now. Maybe just people
no, I
believe
mean,
more.
think about it. You have 48 hours to reflect on your trades, right? Like during the week, you don't ever have that much time to really think. 48 hours is a long time, and you could have like the book, like it says, like poor Elmer has his wife nagging at him that like this position's losing money. Why are you still in it? Get out of this position, you moron. And sure enough, you'll be selling on Monday. So don't be surprised to see a little bit of profit taking today across the board. That is not atypical for a Monday. And um, also, CJ, you did post something in the Discord that I found pretty interesting. Monday also, although it is a day in which we see lots of negative price action, also the best day to buy stocks, right? Which makes sense, right? Buy the dip. And then there's also the concept of turnaround Tuesday, which is mentioned in that book, Why You Win or Lose, that CJ mentioned as well. Um, you want to go ahead and pull that up? Yeah.
This one is actually from the book. You're right. That previous concept that I mentioned about turnaround Tuesday and Mondays and Elmer's wife nagging him to sell his stock. That's all in the book. Why You Win or Lose. That was written in the 1930s, just after the massive wave of speculation in the 20s. This one is from the book Alpha Trader by Brent Donnelly. Very good read. I definitely recommend you guys check it out if you haven't already. But this is just a statistic regarding Tuesdays and how prices performed on Tuesdays. Tuesdays are the best performing days for stocks historically. And even in 2008, which is what the chart is showing up here, we did have positive returns consistently throughout the day of Tuesday, even in the worst of bear markets. So just something interesting to take into account. I think it's definitely has a little bit to do with like market psychology and the way people view certain things, but just an interesting observation.
Oh yeah, definitely an interesting observation and a unique phenomenon. And that chart was from 2008, right? In the midst of one of the worst bear markets that modern markets have seen. Still Tuesdays had that positive price action. But CJ, CJ texted me about 30 minutes before, about 8:30. He goes, "I'm fired up. I'm ready to go whenever." I'm like, "Buddy, we do the show live now. We can't just go live 30 minutes early. We have a set schedule at 9 o'clock. I mean, we could have, but CJ, tell me, what had you so fired up that you were ready to go? You were eager, chomping at the bit to talk about today."
Um, yeah, so I want to jump into this article headline. I remembered it so specifically. The reason why I remembered it was because I was short British pound um, back in September. I was at a conference. It was Market Rebel conference back in the day, I think in Dallas or something. Nevertheless, um, everybody, I wanted to get long the DXY, so as a proxy, I shorted pound. It fell like 3%, and I was like, "Whoa, this, you know, currencies don't move like this. This is an incredible trade." I didn't close it that day when everybody was talking about it and pounding the table about how, oh, it's going below parity. Euro's going below 1, pound is going to go below 1. Sure enough, that was the bottom for both of them, and now they've rallied a ton. I'm seeing a little bit similar sentiment regarding the dollar right now, especially after last week's run. Currencies don't typically move like what the dollar did last week, and everybody has really been talking about it. So anytime that sort of happens, it kind of makes me very wary. For instance, this is from earlier today from Bloomberg. Dollar's busted bull run has bears calling for an end of an era. That's interesting. I also want to go to this one, which is what I care about a little bit more, which has to do with positioning. If you look at hedge funds, they're now officially net short the dollar. Interesting that they waited until we had like one of the most intense weeks of downward price action to actually flip short. I don't really get it. Nevertheless, if we don't keep going down in the dollar, these people are going to be forced to cover. They're going to be forced to buy back DXY or futures or whatever vehicle they use to short, and price is going to go higher. And, as the extreme sentiment made a bottom in the pound and the euro in September, perhaps this is a similar thing going on with the dollar right now. And if we look at the chart of the DXY, I mean, obviously it matters on how today will close, but
Yeah.
The deviation from the moving average is just very,
I mean, when
very
was the last time
profound.
we saw something like that in any FX pair, let alone the dollar, which is arguably the most stable? I mean, look at that divergence. The last time we saw that was when it began the breakdown that led to these current levels. And that was, you know, basically a big drop off and then a steady decline. Do you think we see the same thing this time around? Or, do you think we see a bounce back? You think we see like, yeah, the euro dollar?
So this
That's
is
looking,
the event I was talking about
yeah,
before. It was late September. Massive divergence from the moving average, similar to kind of what we're seeing now. Look, I'm not really here to predict direction when trading these particular assets. All that I want to mention when bringing up the dollar in this conversation today is that the positioning and the sentiment is skewed pretty interesting towards one direction. So I don't know whether or not the dollar will go up or go down by the end of the week. However, if it goes up, it's probably going to go up a lot more than it goes down. Or at least you have a point at the local low where risk is very much defined. So the risk to reward is tilted in the upside for dollar longs in this particular environment, in my opinion. Doesn't mean it has to happen, right? But I think that's where the optimal risk reward is. And you have to kind of think about the ramifications about what would happen to equities if we saw the dollar increase, because that correlation, or that inverse correlation, I could say, has kind of been thrown out ever since like equities have started rallying since the bottom. We've kind of lost that inverse correlation that we've had in the DXY. It comes back a little bit here and there, but any thoughts on the dollar, Monte, before we move on?
I mean, last week was just an anomalous week, an incredible week nonetheless. But something that I don't think we see continue into this week. And, looking at that deviation that you had mentioned, I mean, we're below 100 now. But I think we climb back above 100. The dollar rebounds. If you look at like dollar yen as well, that looks very strong, looks set for continuation. So I think the DXY actually does see, maybe just today, we see a little bit of positive price action. I mean, the thing is so beat up, it's hard to imagine it just keeps falling like it is. But like I mentioned, like this does almost feel in a lot of ways very reminiscent to this initial big drop off here. Like you don't often get continued negative price action to this extent in the DXY, or like something like this here where we had a brief period of positive price action in the DXY followed by an extended downtrend. And I think that we could plausibly still be in the midst of that. So I'm reluctant to get long the dollar here, or even just declare this market being risk off because of dollar strength. So we'll see how it shakes out. but it definitely will be an important thing to watch because we know its implications for Bitcoin and the rest of the market. But there's really nothing to say about Bitcoin. I mean, this weekend was about as boring as it gets. You could have either watched the Bitcoin charts or you could have gone outside and watched the grass grow. Either way, it would have been probably equally entertaining. Um, we saw very, very low volatility and volume. That is so, that look at these candles. Like, was anybody even trading? I think this speaks to the psychology of a trader a little bit, and also maybe brings a little bit of or shines a little bit of a light on the importance of the crypto related equities and their price action in relation to Bitcoin's price action. It used to be, and CJ, you made a great point in I think one of our shows last week, whether it was the webinar or one of these Money in Motions. You talked about how Bitcoin used to be the one that led the charge, like back in 2020 when Bitcoin led the charge, and then we saw the equities follow and the miners follow. This cycle has been different, right? We're seeing the equities lead the charge. Riot today up 4.5%. Mara was up a bit more, pulling back slightly with the rest of the market. Coin continuing to look strong, even though it has this massive doji candle top of an uptrend. I still think these things go higher into earnings. So, and what's more is the fact that Bitcoin barely moved this weekend. I think lends credence to the fact that, you know, um, I think that if we're, that good old analogy, is the dog wagging the tail or is the tail wagging the dog? I think in this instance, the dog is definitely wagging the tail, and the dog would be the crypto stocks, and the tail is Bitcoin. So watching these crypto related equities is a great gauge, and I think without their positive price action, we don't see any positive price action in Bitcoin, and that's evident from the price action we saw over the weekend, which was essentially just lackluster um, volume and volatility. So, not a whole lot to say there for Bitcoin. And really, the same is true for ETH as well. It looks a little bit weaker. Seeing some bearish volume come in today. We'll see if this holds. The important level to watch would be, just right along here. It's basically touched that level now. We'll see if that level holds. If not, watch out below. I think this thing could fall pretty hard. And then just a few assets I did want to mention real quick. That were on the Trade the Chain hottest on Twitter in the last 24 hours, which typically leads to some interesting price action. I thought Dash was an interesting one to be on there. And if we take a look at that chart real quick, what that looks like, found that one to be pretty interesting. Obviously this one has taken a massive beating, but in the grand scheme of things, it did kind of find support here. Still, I mean, not technically a higher low, but the fact that Twitter sentiment is up 100%, people are talking about it. There's some buzz around it. I haven't been able to pinpoint exactly why, but I think it could be the start of a positive move. And then for the rest of the moves, you may notice things like sushi up almost 11% today. Well, that's because it was being heavily shorted heading into the weekend. Shorts being kind of squeezed out today and price going up. That's the case for many other assets as well. Things like Uni.
Do you mind if I just in BNB
Yeah,
in
BMP.
terms of shorting? How come everybody on crypto Twitter is thinking Binance is about to be insolvent? They're like, CZ hasn't tweeted in 48 hours. Like, what is that? I don't get it. Have you seen any of this, Monte? Are you following this?
Yes, yes, yes. Um, it is odd. It is odd. But when you have a CEO that's as vocal and forward facing as CZ is, when he goes radio silent, it is a little concerning. I guess I can understand that, but At the same time, I don't think CEOs should be on Twitter every day, fucking, rambling on about God knows what. So at the same time, I think it's a good thing that he's kind of being radio silent, like you are the CEO of the world's largest exchange. Maybe step away from Twitter a little bit. It's almost like Donald Trump being on Twitter. It's like, what are you doing? Like, you have important stuff to be doing. Like, you're running the world's largest exchange. Like, get to work making it better. Stop tweeting. But looking at this chart, look at this. So, like you said, CJ, like, people have been trying to short this vigorously. That's been evident from the funding rate. And we've talked about this. I've talked about this basically every day since we started doing this show. But look at the BNB funding rate. It is right at that level that I talk about, the 0.03 level, where once it hits that level of funding rate, that's when it's very susceptible to a short squeeze. Look at 1 inch as well. Holy. If anything's going to squeeze to the upside, I'd say 1 inch. I mean, it already basically has, with volume up 329%, open interest up 134%. Stay away from this one. I think it's going to be pretty volatile. But back to BNB, clearly people are still trying to short this, CJ. And I think because of those reasons you mentioned. So counterintuitively, I think that sets it up for a really nice long. We've had this kind of lack of volatility recently. This reminds me very much of like an accumulation. What is going on here? Why can't I get rid of these Bollinger Bands? Training View, come on. It reminds me very much of those accumulation structures that you'll see towards the bottom of a range, right? Like, we were talking about it before the show, but Peter Brandt made a very nice call on Shiba Inu, right? Or was it Doge?
It was Sheeb.
He made a call on Shiba Inu, like a technical call, and it was very similar to this in the sense that after an extended move to the downside, there was a period of what he called accumulation, marked by high levels of volume at that range. We're seeing the same thing here. High levels of volume. Also, people trying to short it. That in conjunction with this accumulation structure, I think sets it up as one of the more favorable assets. And I could see this thing moving up to 300 very quickly on the back of short liquidations or just a tweet from CZ. So if you're looking for like high beta long exposure and a clear level to cut it would obviously be if we like start to test these wicks here around 228. Like if we get down to those levels, I'd probably cut it. But I think the upside here is actually pretty significant. And all it would take is, like I said, a tweet from CZ, short squeeze. Both of those options I think are on the table, and almost equally likely. But what are your thoughts, CJ?
Yeah, I mean, look, when you have these crowded trades or you have very popular trades, especially from the short side that everybody wants to take, even if it works, like it's not going to work as well as if it weren't crowded by definition, because you're going to be competing player versus player. All these other futures traders, we're going to try to get out, after a 10% decline. And, you're looking at obviously there's always the weird situation where, after FTT, it kind of taught us that anything's possible. But at the same time, when you're thinking about what's probable and you're immediately jumping to the conclusions that this is going to be like a replica of FTT, it just doesn't make sense to me. But yeah, no, I don't really have too much to say about Binance. I would like to talk though a little bit about the crypto equities, and I was making this point with you before the show, but something that's interesting about the crypto equities that I've observed is that they sort of have an isolation from a lot of the altcoins. Like if you look today, basically all of them are outperforming in terms of the crypto equities, aside from, the OG DeFi plays, the things like Comp and Maker and some of those that you mentioned that are doing very well. But those are just kind of the hot narrative right now. Whereas like the crypto equities, I think that isolation of having them trade only at like liquid market hours, not be open on a Friday where there's like no liquidity and we're, victim of a flash crash or whatever. That's not really possible for the crypto equities in the sense. Also, I think the reason why they might have a lot more potential for growth um, is because like you have all of these native crypto people who have gotten rich in things like like the contrarian altcoin type plays, not really in traditional stocks. So I think you have a lot of capital that's still in the crypto native sector that has yet to migrate to some of the crypto equities and things like coin. Because if it does turn into like a meme stock, and Wall Street Bets does really start mentioning it, take a day like today where we have the DXY up and Bitcoin was down, to start the morning. Coin doesn't really care. It's tracking, and that goes for the rest of the Bitcoin equities as well. We talk a lot about coin, but it's relevant for all the others as well. So that's very interesting. And, I think another kind of bull point for the crypto equity thesis. But yeah, um, let's talk about Roblox. Bring that chart up real quick.
Yeah, no problem. Let me bring it up. We haven't talked about Roblox in forever.
And then we'll hit CRISPR.
I told Keith I'd do some TA in the Discord forum since this isn't really, our Q&A. But
Right.
Roblox, CJ, like you said, this chart is worth looking at today, in my opinion. And you pointed this out to me, right? So we've filled this gap, which, if you didn't, catch that move, look at how perfectly those wicks distributed right at 45. Like that just shows you how technical a lot of these traders are and who you're competing against. Whether they be algos or people with set limits. Like this level of 45 proved itself as a critical level. But now with Roblox, we're seeing it go back up a little bit, showing signs of positive price action today. And I think that, we could plausibly see this thing run into earnings just based on what we've seen from the previous three earnings reports. Um, this earnings report, even though they missed on the top line significantly, price still continued higher. The most notable earnings report was the one that we were trading in Market Rebellion. That was this one here, where it beat on the top and bottom line only slightly, but the stock jumped significantly, only to quickly retrace, but still went on to make local highs following that. I think a lot of people will be expecting the same thing this time around, and as a result, are positioning themselves in a bullish fashion in anticipation of earnings on Wednesday, August 9th. So this is going to be a big day for the markets. Lots of stocks have earnings on Wednesday, August 9th. Coinbase has it on Thursday, August 3rd. So, we got lots of earnings coming up, and that's going to be particularly interesting in some of these, big names that have made big moves. But CJ, sorry for going off on a little bit of a tangent there. Let's get back to Roblox. What are you seeing when you take a look at this chart, or how would you be playing this?
Yeah, well, it's kind of obviously it's filled that gap like you had mentioned and has now come down and rebounded a little bit in terms of support in the short term. But we've just been in this large accumulation structure for the better part of the last year and a half or so. And so if we do have an interesting breakout above like 48 to 50, that could be something that would be interesting. I really remember the 25% jump following earnings, which happened. So perhaps we end up seeing a catalyst kind of similar to that. But either way, this is a stock we've watched for a long time. It's something that I think fundamentally is very sound, especially for the adoption going into like future generations. You had mentioned didn't they just build a new engine as well for their game?
They did, yeah.
So yeah, they which just instead of blocks, is it like there's a lot more detail, a lot more
Yeah, you can. It's a lot more powerful. It's not going to be all just Lego shaped. It's not going to be a Lego shaped world anymore. You can do a lot more with it. So
I liked the Lego shaped world,
it was
but
their kind of thing. But
guess we can just.
it was a little bit too much like Legos. Like a little bit. It seemed like copyright infringement a little bit, which always worried me when I was buying the stock. But
There's going to be a lot of copyright infringement because if you have this engine that you can make,
oh yeah, anything, right?
games on, you can just make a perfect replica of Fortnite or something. And
Oh yeah, it's already been done. It's already been done. It's like the exact same, but in the game. So yeah, I mean they're making powerful moves behind the scenes, and like you said, ZJ, this is like an accumulation structure, not unlike what we're seeing with Binance. I would say they're similar. This
I don't want to spend any too much more time on Roblox, but can we just do one last thing and check the market cap or compare it between something like, Epic Games or an EA or something like that
yeah,
in terms of market
um,
cap? I wanted to kind of think about how big Roblox could grow.
24.3 billion for Roblox.
I think the others are well above 100 in terms of like Blizzard, Activision Blizzard, and EA.
EA is only 16 billion. Activision Blizzard's got to be it.
EA is such a scam. They just got all of the patents for the sports games, and they just make the
Yeah,
same game every year.
70 billion for Activision Blizzard.
That's more comparable to something like a Roblox, I would say.
Yeah,
So I think Roblox should be valued at some point at those levels comparably. Because I think, as the kids who are playing it now, like 15 to 22, like those kids are going to get older and, it's just only going to carry on into the future generation.
I agree. I agree. Well, that's what we're watching to start the week. As always, we appreciate everyone for checking out today's episode. Please like and subscribe. It really helps out our channel with the YouTube algorithm. And don't forget, you can head over to tradethechain.com and get a 14-day free trial. Highly recommend you check it out. It's the first thing I check every morning. Check that dashboard, see what's popping. And you can try it for free for 14 days at tradethechain.com. But CJ, I will leave you with the final word today, my friend.
Yeah, just being patient, kind of like what we said at the beginning of the show, just kind of watching the market digest all of the price action within the dollar last week. So we'll see. But either way, I hope you guys have a great start to the week, and we'll see you back here same time tomorrow. Till next time.